Welcome to the joint board meeting, special joint board meeting of the SBCC Trustees Board and the Santa Barbara City Council. Welcome to all of you. The mission statement for SBCC is that as a public community college and dedicated to the success of each student, Santa Barbara City College provides students a diverse learning environment that inspires curiosity and discovery, promotes global responsibility, and fosters opportunity to all. This meeting is one of our serious efforts to ensure that we fulfill that mission. Now, this is because it is a special board meeting, it is nonetheless public. The first thing I'd like to do is to do the roll call, and I will introduce the trustees, and would you introduce the council members, Helene? We have, well, let's see. We're waiting for two council members, two trustees, but we'll go right ahead. At the end of the table is Veronica Gugliardo, and then Marcia Croninger, Craig, and not Greg, they were just discussing Craig and Greg, and Marty Bloom, and I am Marianne Kugler.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great to be here on City College's campus, and first time I think any of us have been around the horseshoe here, I think, right? I'm Mayor Helene Schneider, and with me is Mayor Pro Tem Greg Hart and council members Kathy Murillo, Randy Rouse, and Frank Hotchkiss, and we hope to see council members Bendy White and Gail Francisco here soon, but they're not here at the moment.
Thank you. Now, it is important for you to know that members of the public have the opportunity to directly address the board on any item described in the notice for this meeting before the board's consideration of the item. And unless otherwise determined by the board, each person is limited to 5 minutes. Those wishing to address the board at this meeting will complete a written request and return it to the board secretary. Angie, have we any requests? Thank you. All right, then. I think we can get started. I have introduced the trustees, and I want to point out that we have many, many college staff members attending as well. And I am delighted to see that because we all, and you more than any of us, are going to be responsible for helping implement this. So we're delighted to have you here. Would you just raise your hand so people can see how many Santa Barbara City College employees are here? Yeah. Thank you very much. Two of you, huh? Thank you very much. All right, now, as you know, since there is no public comment, I would like to mention that this is just the first of a series of activities and meetings that will be that are the natural result of the task force report we're about to hear, including the work of establishing the implementation team as soon as possible to do the follow-up on this effort. Now I'd like to introduce Marty Bloom, whom you all know probably much better than you know me. And she will provide the background for the task force effort and introduce any of the task force members who are here. And then she will introduce Daniel.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I welcome everybody from the city, because I don't think this report would have been possible in any way without the activities of the city coming to our meetings and so on, and now today having the city council here. It's really wonderful, and I think we're going to make headway because of that, because we have both of our groups there. It was last summer when President Gaskin asked the Board of Trustees to form a task force to address neighborhood issues, and I think that was quite a bold move. It hadn't been done before that I know of. When I was on the city council, I remember getting calls about parking, noise, more parking, lots of traffic problems. And frankly, you know, and I know our police are out there trying to fix that. I see police chief was here a second ago, he's there. So these issues have been going on for a long time. I tried to get back, and I bet if I could have found it, and I didn't, I bet I could find a news press article from 1930 concerning traffic and noise and so on. So we are finally going to be doing something. So this is the first step for a City College administration to do this, and I wanted to thank Lori for that, Lori Gaskin. Partnering with the city has really strengthened this task force, and so we thank you, as I just did. But having neighbors on the task force also grounded it in reality, for sure. We have a whole bunch of neighbors here. We have Diana Bottoms, and I saw Mark Taylor and Bill Oliphant from Oceano. Can you wave? Yeah, they came to all the meetings, which was wonderful. We also have BB Longstreet from the Lower West Side. I don't see her here yet. Oh, she just walked in. There you go. Great entrance. That was good. And Sue Miller from Loma Alta neighborhood. Oh, and Jeff King, architect on the Mesa. But there were others, too, who came, and we had outreach meetings into neighborhoods. Truly was, it was wonderful. And the neighbors at first would come to these meetings, and they would come kind of hesitantly. They didn't know if anything was really going to happen. But frankly, I think by the end, they're really realizing it now that they see the task force report, too. So thank you for everybody who took their time to work on this. I'm really proud of this report. It offers a lot of directions to go for us to find solution, and it gives everybody some relationships so that we can call and talk with each other if there's any problems. The implementation of the ideas in this report are going to be really important. And so we're just starting out here, but we want to get everybody on the same page with the report, and that's what we're going to do today and see if we can start the implementation. So I want to introduce Daniel Isofono, and many of you with the city recognize him. He worked on our general plan, and Greg and I think go way back with him, and I can't remember the first time we met him. Seems like he's almost part of the city staff, but he's been helping us on this, so we'll turn it over to Daniel. And that's his handwriting, the thing that you couldn't quite read, but it's fascinating.
Well, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees, the City Council members, staff, and neighbors surrounding the college campus for the opportunity to serve as a facilitator and moderator for the group. It was an outstanding experience for me and a learning experience as well to address these important issues about student behavior in and around the campus, and to find ways to address those issues and to come up with solutions and strategies, ultimately to promote civility, neighborhood well-being, community responsibility, and citizenship. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the key aspects of the report and the recommendations from the task force. We can go into a lot more depth and detail with your questions or comments, and I'll leave it up to the board and council members as to how you'd like to conduct that. We were very well served by our two co-chairs, Trustee Bloom and Trustee Kugler, and as was pointed out, a whole great group of neighborhood representatives that you see listed here, many of which are in attendance today. We had great City of Santa Barbara staff attendance at the workshops as well, and they were quite critical in terms of shaping the recommendations and offering ideas all along the way. Again, staff of the college were also vital to it and offered a lot of insight that helped to shape these recommendations. As was mentioned, we had 6 meetings of the task force from October to January of this year, and we also had 7 what we called focus group meetings, and the purpose of those were to augment the discussion of the task force, open up the constituency groups so we had more input, more ideas flowing in. So we had special meetings with the City of Santa Barbara department heads and administrative staff. We had academic senate here at the college, the classified consultation group, an advanced leadership committee of the college. We met with the student senate, and they provided extremely valuable input, and true student leadership was in evidence there. and then special meetings in addition to the task force with neighbors of the Oceano area, as well as from the west side, that were convened and led in part by the staff or task force members who represented those areas. And so all of that is what this recommendation document is based on. The issues are many, and I would again like to thank our neighborhood residents for their ability to work through what are very difficult and often very emotional and difficult issues that they face on a day-to-day basis. I don't think they overstated these issues. I think they were very respectful, certainly expressed a lot of intense feelings about it, and that's because they don't just are concerned about their own situation or quality of life, but also for the safety and well-being of the students. And I think that was very evident in all of the discussions that we had. And it's important to note they had that broader balance in mind, and it came through in how we crafted and shaped the recommendations. Clearly, we start with some of the classic issues with students coming, living away for the first time, party disturbances, just generally rude behavior, and other problems like you see listed here, maybe some bordering on the criminal, some maybe venturing across that line. And so those are concerns that were expressed, along with some of the classic Santa Barbara issues like traffic congestion, parking, conflict among modes of transportation, overcrowding in houses, violations of zoning. At least there was that sense or potential there. Particularly noted was unscrupulous landlords. Maybe people who are out to really maximize every dollar and not necessarily provide the best quality of life for students in those apartments. Given the enormous pressures you have on housing in this community, it's expected, it's typical of other areas with this kind of high demand and limited housing supply. So a lot of these issues you could predict at the outset. I think all of us were concerned about wanting to prevent some additional catastrophic activities like we've seen in Isla Vista and elsewhere around the United States. These issues are not uncommon, unfortunately, and that's something we wanted to take a proactive position on by forming this task force and bringing these recommendations forward. The recommendations fall into these 7 major categories. Some of them are very short-term oriented and could be addressed on a fairly quick turnaround basis, and we hope that's the case. I know that the neighbors would very much like to see a demonstration of and a show of good faith to make the things that are very common sense and reasonable from a student perspective as well as from the neighbors and the college and the city, and to get those things moving. We would need the help of an implementation task force, as was mentioned earlier, and that's one of the action steps coming up. So we'll just go through each of these areas in turn and talk about a little bit of what came in to the thinking behind it and why these are some of the top recommendations. Dealing with this whole issue of noise, which seems to be a regular, a constant theme in all of our discussions that we had. In order to make the neighborhood better, we came across this noise abatement ordinance model that has been successfully developed in the area of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So we call it the Cal Poly SLO model for short. We know that it won't be a perfect document for us in its state that they use there. We have to adapt it, we'll have to adjust it, and fit it into the city of Santa Barbara context. But there were several field trips conducted by members of our task force. I believe trustees participated in those as well. People came back with very impressed with the progress they made there in San Luis Obispo, and felt that we needed to work here with our own city attorney, with our own staff and college staff to determine how this could be applied to our community. One of the things I would note throughout these discussions, and I would say neighbors as well as staff of the college and the city were very strong about, is that we should use administrative remedies where possible. We don't want to make this into a criminal activity where we have students that are young, they're away from home for the first time, they get a mark on their records and it's with them for the rest of their lives. Nobody wanted to see that result. If we could curtail that using the model that I just outlined, and they seem to have done this very successfully there in San Luis Obispo, this seemed to be a very, very good approach. And I might add, when we went to the Student Senate, there was also a sense that there needed to be some real action, and that these students that are probably causing most of the problems are relatively small in number, do not represent the quality of, and character of the students overall. But unfortunately, like in so many things, a small group can have that perceptual effect, and we all share the concerns, including the students that we talk to. Some of the other ideas, I'm not going to go into depth here, just highlighting some of the most important. So along with what we call this noise ordinance model, is this idea of the Student Neighborhood Assistance Program, which is to really employ students as part of this implementation or enforcement team, and that by peer-to-peer contact and communication, there's good opportunity for getting students out there in the surrounding neighborhoods to realize the impact that they're having, not only on themselves and with their immediate neighbors, but in terms of the reputation of the college. And that can be a very effective way to bring people on board. So this was another key to the recommendations. And students get paid. They are trained by the police or other security personnel at the college in order to perform these services, and they seem to be very well received in the case of San Luis Obispo. The second category has to do with more general quality of life concerns, and the task force members are calling for an implementation or an enforcement of existing ordinances, knowing what's on the books, what the leeway is for enforcing, whether it be noise, litter, garbage, placement of trash cans, debris that might end up strewn around neighborhoods, all of these sort of basic housekeeping items. We would like to see, or the task force would like to see, those things done in accordance with existing city ordinances. And maybe there would be ways those ordinances could be adjusted or tweaked, and those ideas could be tested on the community members to make sure that it works for all parties. And again, the emphasis was on administrative remedies. Along with this idea of the noise abatement and the ordinance enforcement is relationship building. You know, and we see this often in our society. People drive, they get behind the wheel of a car, and suddenly that person that they're driving alongside is an alien figure, and there's no personal connection. So we take liberties with that, cutting them off, or we go at too high a speed, we cut through neighborhoods, because we don't have that personal connection. And I think that rightly so, the task force members thought if we get students and neighbors together in different venues, in different capacities, that there's an opportunity to build an understanding of what it's like to live together in the neighborhood, and that this would be in itself helpful. And you start to learn people's name, a first name basis, that goes a long way toward changing the dynamic out there. And so there were a lot of ideas suggested. Any one or more of these could be implemented. They're not costly. Some of these are happening already now on a voluntary basis. So this would be more on a systematic basis. The other idea I mentioned before, the Student Senate really saw this as an opportunity for students on campus to exert leadership, which is something they are promoting. It's in their charter as a Senate to look for ways to develop student leadership on important community issues, and they immediately seized upon this set of issues as an opportunity for students to take those kind of leadership roles. I might add, with respect to the earlier comments too, on the SLO, the city police department representatives on the task force did a magnificent job in talking about how the current noise ordinance is sometimes difficult to enforce, that it has ambiguity in there, which makes it hard to set a definite line when you've exceeded that and to bring those issues forward. So all of these kinds of recommendations fall together with that and seem to have a strong backing from all of our members of the task force. I might add, all of these recommendations that ended up in the task force were a true consensus, which means everybody agreed with all of these recommendations, which is pretty unusual, I think. Traffic and transportation, not surprisingly, the feasibility of looking at traffic calming. I've been involved in a lot of traffic calming discussions in different cities, and they're anything but calm, unfortunately, because people look at these devices in different ways. Some people see them as barriers and restrictions on free movement of automobiles, and others say they're not enough and you should restrict travel by auto even more. What I've seen work the best is demonstrations, where you put something in, you test it for 3 months or 6 months, you get data, you get people to experiment with it, see how it works, and if it doesn't work, you take it out, or you try something different, or you move it around. We've done that in communities that we've worked with, and we started off with maybe 10 different interventions, and maybe we end up with 4, and everyone's comfortable with that, and we make those permanent. And so this calls for engaging the city traffic engineer to work through those possibilities. Again, trying to further this collaboration between city and the college and the neighbors. And you can see it all the way through with some of the specific things that were mentioned. The idea of the entryways to the east and west campus. There's dangerous turning movements out there. So whether we did anything with the student behavior, the risk of pedestrian accidents and other safety problems out there is definitely noted by the task force, and we should take action to prevent any serious consequences where that's concerned. I also just highlighted this interesting point, which Mary Ann and I attended all the focus groups, and we were both surprised when we met with the faculty and the classified staff. We didn't generate this idea. It came from those groups. And they said, you know, inadvertently, by making most classes end on Thursday and Friday is a lot of days for meetings, we're basically shortening and putting more impact on a fewer number of days. It also has the effect of making Thursday night more like a party night, because then Friday is not Thursday night is not a school night, as we like to say. And so that increases the chances for more parties, more of the disturbing type of behavior that the neighborhood representatives are experiencing. So, and then you think about 2.8 million plus students in the California community college system. That's a very important role they play in serving the needs of the state. And can we afford not to use our facilities on a more, complete basis? And while it might be more convenient to use, have all classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe we need to look at Friday and open that access up and distribute the load on the facilities of this highly impacted neighborhood. So that's something you might want to take a look at. But we thought it was intriguing that this faculty and staff actually suggested that idea on their own. Enforcing the code of conduct. There is a code of conduct that the college has articulated, and it is presented to the students, and they're asked to sign off on it. But the task force members said, we need to raise the bar, make it even stronger, redesigning the mandatory student orientation program so that the consequences of not following this code would be seen in a stronger light. So we didn't attempt to design how that would take place, but this was a recommendation that came from a number of the focus groups, again, faculty and staff noting that, along with other members of the task force. And this idea of consequences, that it's not a license to party just because you're now away from your parents' home for the first time. There has to be some responsibility associated with that. The students want to be seen and treated as adults, and this is one of those areas where they need to act accordingly. Developing a protocol for responding to unruly student behavior. This was another area, so when neighbors report on issues or incidents, they want to know that there is a systematic way of dealing with that. No doubt the college has a way of doing that. They want to make that more visible, more transparent, and more definite. So one of the ideas was a hotline or maybe some kind of comment tracking system. And there are actually smartphone applications that are already built that help you do that. So you know when the issue has been logged in, you know when it's been resolved or addressed, and there's some kind of reporting back that closes the loop on any incident that's reported. So these are things that also are confidence building measures between the college, the city, and the residents. Recognizing that neighbors deserve a family-friendly neighborhood. This is more of a goal and a broad direction. Obviously, it's not something the college can bring about on its own. It's subject to market forces, but that was an expressed a desire from our neighborhood residents in particular. They don't want it to just be turned over, and they want to maintain some of those classic elements and mix of families, adults, and workers, not just students. Coordination has to be maintained. We've talked a lot about that, and we will refer to that again in the action steps. I thought an interesting point also to find a way through the ed code or with city cooperation, and if it required some policy adjustment from the city council or others, to enable the SBPD to come onto the campus on occasion. But what's behind this is the fact that just the visual presence of security personnel from the college or police presence from the city has a dampening effect. That even when people wear logo wear with the college logo on it, people notice that can make students in the area living in these neighborhoods feel like they're not just out there on their own. They're being watched. There's people that are taking notes of what's going on, and that seemed to be valuable in and of itself. On housing, we talked about engaging the landlords and the property owners, maybe a rating system, not unlike Airbnb. You know, if you've used that service, the guests rate the landlords and the landlords rate the guests, but it's done on a voluntary basis. You can't require people that are renting their property to do it, but just the mere fact that many of the quality landlords would do it. If you don't do it, then that's somewhat of a statement in of itself. So those landlords and property owners that voluntarily choose to have their properties rated or listed as one of the qualified properties or rental accommodations is already stating that they're willing to live up to a certain quality level, a set of standards of how they want to maintain their properties. And again, neighbors and task force members recognize that it's probably a handful of landlords that are not living up to the quality standard we would expect. So these were some of those ideas that were listed there. Providing students with tools and resources. The city has a housing mediation program, maybe opening that up and acquainting students more with that information. Some of the other ideas are listed there as well. Keeping track of which properties get the most complaints, and then publishing that. It's a public record. It shouldn't involve legal problems. Hopefully that would be the case. That, again, provides students and parents with some information as consumers, which are the best situations for their students. Finding ways to increase adult supervision. I mentioned that earlier. In the case of four-year colleges or universities that have on-campus housing programs, they have resident advisors. It's very well organized. I mean, these are not new problems that just appeared in the year 2014 or 15. And the reason we have resident advisors is because they manage the houses and the dormitories. We don't have our own college housing, so we don't have the equivalent role. And so that's something structurally to wrestle with. We don't have a good solution, but maybe there's a way to develop this with landlord cooperation. We could be creative there. And so I think we didn't actually detail out how to achieve it, but it's there as a very strong idea nevertheless. This last set of things, the task force recognized that no matter how many of these things we put in place in 2015, the issue will never go away. Every semester, every school year, the process has to start over. And we have to monitor and manage and coordinate on an ongoing basis. So that's why this is a section unto itself. We want to continue this partnership. And I understand this is a historic meeting of the City Council and the Board of Trustees, never before done. I think it symbolizes where the task force would like to see things go in the future. And there's many issues. This is only one set of issues that we need to wrestle with. Physical development, planning, environmental impacts. There's a lot of room for ongoing discussion. Best practices was highlighted as something we can continue to bring forward and learn from other places, not just San Luis Obispo. The idea of an action plan, I think, would be the subject of this implementation task force, and that would be a way to track all of these recommendations on an ongoing basis. And there was willingness on the part of many of the neighborhood representatives to serve on that implementation task force. So there's hope, there's faith, there's confidence that we can move forward. To monitor student behavior and to make sure we have that data, some kind of measurable results can be brought forward. To also address the college's long-range development plans. Again, nothing that would happen right away, but we know there's ongoing facility planning discussions, a master planning process. The college has other sites that it addresses in different ways. Maybe there's a way that we can develop a multi-site or a multi-center approach, again, to try to decant some of the pressure, some of the intensity of this main campus. And then we already talked about spreading the campus utilization across more days of the week, or maybe even a Saturday, just given the demand for what is clearly a very valuable product that is Santa Barbara City College. So that is an interesting ongoing point. The Chancellor's Office, we talked about talking with them to see how we can address some of the institutional constraints that might stand in the way of the college doing things outside the Ed Code. Maybe legislative reform or policy changes are required. That's something that the task force was interested in. And this idea of the joint college city planning effort, looking at traffic and housing, again, all of those things would not be resolved with this task force report. There's a lot of discussion here about, well, could City College consider developing housing or being in some sort of public-private partnership that would cause housing to be built that could be brought in under a special program. I've actually done work at other community colleges where on-campus housing was considered, was an option. I don't know that it's been built in the state of California, but other states have actually done it. Colorado Mountain College, for example, does have on-campus housing. So it's not completely out of the scope of community colleges in the USA. And it's just another aspect of thinking creatively about our specific housing problems. So that could be more viable than we think. The follow-up actions, in summary, were to, number one, create a timeline and assign responsibilities for these action items. And number two, to have this meeting, so we can already check off one of those. But most importantly was to have this task force moving forward on the top priority actions, which were also the consensus recommendations from the task force, N1, N2, and Q2, which is about the noise abatement ordinance, the student neighborhood assistance program, and dealing with these other quality of life issues. Commit to progress by fall of this year so we can again have that faith-building measure and to continue to monitor and report on progress. Lastly, I did want to just acknowledge we had great coverage from the news press and Independent, I believe, which helped us and helped to create a broader awareness of the issues, and they were very constructive in their reporting. And the student journalism classes also participated, which was a ready laboratory for their work here at the college as well. So I thank you for your support and help in moving this forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions, go into any more depth, and members of the task force are here if you'd like to call on them as well. I'm sure they can add a lot of flavor to the recommendations if need be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. We owe you a great deal of appreciation for the wonderful job you did with this. This is a tough task, and you did a great job. Now, trustees and council members, do you have questions that you would like to ask Daniel or Marty or myself? Yes, Frank?
I don't have a question. I would just want to say I can't imagine how what you did could have been more complete. You've got everything there, maybe even the kitchen sink. And so the problem will be how to narrow it down and apply what really fits, I think. Thank you very much, though.
Yeah, thank you.
I know there was another hand up. Kathy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you say it, Iannofano?
Isofano, yeah.
Isofano?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was looking through some of the details, and I was wondering if anything had been done about the smoking areas. Are we ready to get into details? Is that okay if I start in?
You can ask questions.
Okay,
Certainly.
so
Just don't give solutions.
Yeah, I promise. I have a few. But I do know that when the campus passed a smoking ban, then people would leave the campus to smoke, and that had impacts on the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Has there been any progress in creating smoking areas on campus? Is that a solution? I'm just wondering if that is still an issue with the neighbors, or?
It was brought up as an issue. And you know, it was noted that the creativity of students was in evidence where they bring furniture out to certain corners, lots, and establish these meeting areas, and smoking takes place there. So that was a concern. But we didn't have, it was an unintended consequence of banning the smoking on the campus, I believe, is how we looked at it.
Okay, and then I saw something about banning skateboards.
Yeah.
And where I must have not come to the meeting where that was a subject.
Yeah, it did come up on a couple occasions, and I think it's the skateboarding was banned on the bridge that crosses over the highway between the east and west campus. And so the idea was, well, maybe it should be banned in some of these neighborhoods where the right-of-way is constrained, parking makes it dangerous as well as difficult with potential collisions of autos and bicycles and skateboarders and pedestrians. It just seemed to be too much for some residents. So that idea was also offered here.
So that would be something on our city streets that we're looking at. I just have to say clearly that I believe in skateboarding as a form of alternative transportation, very important to young people, and so I would be very careful about taking away, a transportation mode for them. In terms of code of conduct, is there contact with parents when there's a breach of the code?
Lori,
I know some of the students are adults, so calling their parents is not cool.
I'm going to call on President Gaskin to answer this.
Legally, we do not have the authority to contact parents if anything occurs off of campus property or outside the scope of an instructional activity. Let's say if a student is on a sanctioned college field trip. We don't have authority for overseeing the code of conduct or even parental notification, no.
That's one of the reasons why this being a joint project and making sure that the task force itself included both institutions is the case, because neither of us can do everything that the task force and the community were concerned about.
Okay, very good. And if I could ask a question? I'm
Yes,
sorry,
please.
ma'am.
That's fine.
Of our own police chief, one of the suggestions in there is adding an officer on campus. And Chief, are you prepared to tell us what that would entail? I know we have beat coordinators, and someone is certainly assigned to the west part of town, or the Mesa, rather. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, Lori and I have been talking for quite a while about this, and we do have a beat coordinator on the west side, but I see City College as a city within a city, and I think it's going to require more than that. We certainly want the community to be safe and the students and the staff to be safe. And one of the things that we've been thinking about, and we've talked about it very briefly, and we have not made this happen yet, was to do a pilot program much like we did at the Franklin Center, and maybe have a police office on campus so that we can periodically come by and have a presence, maybe 1 or 2 parking spots for police cars, maybe conduct some community meetings here specifically with the community surrounding the college, and treating it like a city within the city. I think the cost is low. The other great opportunities that it gives us is to enhance the already what I believe to be a great collaboration with the college in assisting with some training for their employees who are not officers, building on what the gentleman said about building the relationships. I think one of the greatest disasters within a disaster is when something happens and it's the first time that our employees meet each other during a disaster. So my idea is to begin a great communication process to assist with some training that would be of no cost to the college and would be of no cost to me, to include some of their security staff in that training at no cost again. But it would really set the tone for great relationships and a great communication piece. I do not have the resources to put someone here full-time to walk it like a beat, but certainly if it's accessible to all of our officers 24/7, where they can come on campus in the middle of the night to write a report, have a cup of coffee, walk the campus at 1 or 2 in the morning, as we do now, and treat it like a city within a city. I think that would be a great pilot program, and we're ready to do that whenever we're told that that would be something they would like us to do. And I think it's very, very doable. And I think that those are just a couple of the opportunities of a pilot program like this would really help. For the non-students, the residents, I think it'd be a great opportunity for them to meet with our officers on campus to talk about some of the concerns and addressing them immediately instead of waiting for a month meeting to have a neighborhood watch meeting, but to have us as part of the family at City College. Those are my thoughts, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to do that because, again, would not add officers, would not add overtime, would not add equipment. It would just add a great communication piece that would enhance our communication and collaboration with the college. So we're ready to do that. I've spoken to my staff about it, and they know I'm here, and I'm glad this came up. So I thank you for the question.
I have more, but I did want to say that of course, we're having this discussion with all due respect to the security program that the City College already has. I didn't mean to imply that you didn't already have a security program. We're going into budget discussions, and if there's a way to share the cost, if this pilot program obviously is going to have a cost associated with it. Two more questions, Chief. The nature of the police calls related to City College students, and also your thoughts on this proposed noise ordinance. So,
I'm gonna defer the noise ordinance to my lawyer, and I'm sure he'll address it. I think that's the best answer I could give you to that part of the question. In terms of, let me back up. They have good people here, and Eric's a good guy, and I've known him for many years because I've taught here for many years also, part-time. But I think that it's not to say that things are not going right here. I think we will be a good tool. We're not going to come on campus and take over policing. We work for the college as another resident. We are not coming here to commandeer the security force or to change policies of the college. What I'm saying is we're ready to be a tool for the college to keep everyone safe. We're not interested in coming in here and doing a full-fledged substation and have cops walking down every hall. However, I will say that, as we all know, incidents around campuses from elementary schools to universities are occurring across the country. And I think this is a good approach to have us become a better tool. So we will be a tool in the college's toolbox, not the other way around.
Thank you, Kathy, for a second before you ask the next question. On the issue of resources, financial and other resources, that is one of the reasons why the task force wished this whole process to be referred to people inside the two institutions who could create an implementation group, certainly including the police, to work on this and to assess what resources are needed, financially and otherwise. We expect that to need to be shared, and we know that some of it will take financial resources. But at this point, the task force did not address the cost of any of the recommendations. What their role was clearly was to to identify the issues and to address possible solutions to those issues. So that next stage will include discussions of financial resources, and that was not part of the discussion at this point, except that we know that the college must commit to sharing resources as we go along.
If I could add a couple of things. One of the things that my staff and I met about this morning was to conduct a safety audit every 6 months of the campus and meeting with the president and making a report to the trustees. I think that a lot of things change, not just behavior, but aesthetically. And so this morning my staff and I, should we be asked to be a member of the toolbox, is to complete every 6 months an analysis of the safety, not just doing the analysis of crimes that occur, but in general, the safety of the community that surrounds the college and the statistics that might come up due to crimes being committed and reports being taken. But I think that's something we should do anyway, and we'll do. If that's the only thing that we're used for, we want to really participate in that. And then lastly, and selfishly, it'll give me an opportunity to find some local residents who want to be Santa Barbara police officers.
I like it.
Thank you very much for your answers. Okay.
And my next point would be about code enforcement. What I heard in one of the meetings was residents on Loma Alta, and then it seemed like there was one residence that was causing most of the trouble. I'm trying to make eye contact with someone from that street, and there was calls about maybe too many residents in there, and also that the owner of the house was not responsive to neighbors when they called. So I don't, if a staff member has something to come up and say about it, I'm glad to hear. I just wanted to make a statement that it seemed like there was one particular property that was the trouble.
Good afternoon. I'm George Buell, I'm Community Development Director. In my capacity, I oversee building, planning, and code enforcement, housing, and human services. And Councilmember Murillo, in response to your question, when it comes to code enforcement, as issues have come up through the task force process, I have immediately directed that follow-up be conducted by staff. We heard of unsafe living conditions related to structures. Sent building inspectors out immediately, and we were unable to find any code violation. Now, we don't debate the fact that there are a lot of students or kids, young people, living in the apartments that are around the city college. But in order to take any sort of action about overcrowding, I know that's one word that I'm a little bit sensitive to. We did not find any instance where it met the legal tests of overcrowding, nor are we aware of any building code violations. In the event that we were to discover situations or conditions like that, we would take action as required by our protocols.
Okay, and now that the neighbors see your face and you hear your name, they know who to call.
Well, and
They've known me
you
for a
were
while.
a wonderful part of the discussion.
That's right.
And very important to the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buell. I'm done with questions. I have comments, but I think we'll do that later, right? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I had a question about the gray area, it sounds, between the college's code of conduct and the city as a whole, and how it sounds like something occurs on campus, you have the ability to mete out punishment to the student potentially, but when they're in the community, it really is essentially the legal system that's in play. And I'm thinking in terms of what we can do to connect that at the community side. I know, for example, we have our restorative policing effort, which attempts to take behaviors on State Street and work with those folks to find a better outcome for them and potentially use their families as a tool in the toolbox. Is there anything, Chief, that is applicable in that sense? Do we have any ability to reach out to parents of young enforcement case situations?
When it is off campus, yes. We're here to enforce the law and not the rules. The rules are on campus. In terms of off campus, if the young person is under 18, we certainly make contact with the parents. If they're over 18, we do not. We're not obligated to do that, and they have to go through the legal system, even if they're students here. There are students that currently live in Isla Vista who are students here, and the sheriff feels the same way. Off-campus behavior under 18, we certainly make contact with parents, just as we do at Coda and State if a 15 or 16-year-old comes in contact due to a misbehavior or a breaking of the law. Other than that, it's no different.
So we do publicize people. We have sort of an aggressive public outreach effort in terms of certain crimes that we know that we publicize DUI enforcement, we publicize major drug sales and things like that. So there's a tipping point where adults have their name publicized in the paper for violating various crimes. Is there anything that prevents us from communicating with communicating violations of the law to parents of adults?
No.
So that is something potentially that we could be doing if we chose to do that.
I don't think that would be a good idea. I think, we continually have to remember people's civil rights. They're adults. They're innocent until proven guilty, and I would suggest that none of us dive into trying to divert from that. I think we do at times, and not all the time, put in the newspaper. If news writers go to the police station and look at reports, which they do, I think about just about every day, to see what's going on that week or weekend, those come out. We are not in the habit, or is it our policy, and I don't want it to be our policy, to start just putting names and faces of adults out there who have made a mistake and have been cited or arrested. I think we're pushing the envelope, and I would suggest we not go there. I think people's civil rights are that precious. I think that if we address what's going on around the campus here and on campus to be the other tool in the college campus's toolbox, I think that's probably the best we could do. But I would suggest strongly not to dive outside of that.
It's important to notice that the model that was recommended for us to consider was designed partly to keep students from being in the criminal justice system immediately upon their breaking our codes of behavior, unless it was a major serious crime, so that we could do preventive and improvement action without having them spend the rest of their lives with their name in some record that prevents them from getting jobs or being in the military and so forth. And the task force was very sensitive about that. Lori, did you want to say something about that?
That's a very good point, and I want to ensure that I'm really clear about our responsibility and our authority. Our authority for implementing discipline in instances where students violate standards of conduct, and those standards of conduct are outlined in Education Code. We can implement discipline when it occurs, again, on campus or in an instructionally related activity. But truly, and I couldn't agree more with Chief Sanchez, we're dealing with adults. The majority of our students are 18 to 24-year-olds, and the minute they step off campus and they're not engaged in instructional activity, they have freedoms and rights. And in speaking with my students, I would be really concerned about being very, very aggressive on the policing side of it. I am very much in favor of what was shared with you about the idea of having a a presence on campus that has nothing to do with the day-to-day responsibility, but rather has a community outreach effort. That's a really important and very positive step.
Thank you,
I
Dr.
guess maybe the model then it sounds like the task force is recommending is more the restorative justice model that's being used in the high
Yes.
schools.
Yes.
Peer-to-peer counseling, peer pressure in a positive sense, that direction, as opposed to an enforcement.
Exactly right.
Okay.
I spoke to a woman who is a landlord at Cal Poly. The condo building, or the apartment building is right there next to the campus, so it's the students really want to be in that building. And the students who are there, they're paid for by their parents. And so what they do is in their lease, and I know there's a model lease thing that we're looking at, in the lease, they take the parents' names down. And she said rarely do they have to call them, but once in a while, it's a landlord to parent. And that doesn't involve any police, it doesn't involve anything else, but what it is the landlord saying, hey, your son or daughter seems to be partying all night and causing problems, or whatever it is. But she said rarely do they have any problems, because the students who are paying the rent know that their parents are paying the rent, and they have to shape up. So, that can be just a private thing without government interference.
And I think the Cal Poly noise ordinance model addresses a lot of what is being asked about, and especially working with students who are part of the solution in, again, that peer pressure piece. And the administrative fines are pretty hefty in order to be a deterrent for that kind of behavior. So I think the more, and I guess it's, it's a workload issue for our city council to direct our community development staff, because really it would be an ordinance committee process, I would think, and I don't know if it's planning commission or, as well or not, but I think a lot of the concerns or issues that you bring up would be part of this, what we see in Cal Poly. I did have a question. I think after we were complete with our task force work, between then and now, I thought I read somewhere that there are some bills in Sacramento that are being introduced that have to do with code of conduct of students outside a campus. And could you give us a little more information what that is, and maybe your thoughts on it, if that's something we should suggest approval, or, just your thoughts on that?
Yes, without question, I hope that we can garner support. It's Senator Jackson's bill that extends jurisdiction for implementing discipline to certain criminal behaviors off campus, and this has to do with sexual assault. So this is very much, I personally am very much in favor of this, but that's certainly a punitive approach, and I like to be a proactive kind of carrot approach. So some of the things that we're talking about lead to that more positive thing, but yes. The other thing I wanted to share in response to Trustee Bloom's comment, I had our legal counsel draft an amendment to a lease that speaks to the requirement that their tenant, if they are an SBCC student, abide by the SBCC Code of Conduct. And that has been shared with the major tenants around this proximate neighborhood. And some are expressing positive response to that. Again, we cannot require it, but we have provided the legal basis for that, the template, the documentation, and we're out there knocking on the doors of these landlords asking, can you please utilize this with our students? Because that gives that qualification that they will report any inappropriate behaviors to the college.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
The city attorney about student ordinance?
I think the chief was referring some
chief.
questions to our city attorney
Yes.
about the ordinance, right?
Thank you. Ariel Kawan, city attorney. The easiest way to describe the differences between Santa Barbara's noise ordinance and San Luis Obispo is this. The Santa Barbara ordinance is very objective and very quantitative. By objective, I mean there's very little discretion. If the noise exceeds a certain decibel level, it's a violation. But to enforce it, you need a noise meter and you need time kind of to freeze in order to measure the sound. San Luis Obispo, on the other hand, is very subjective. There's wide latitude in enforcing it, but it doesn't require a noise meter. So it's much easier to enforce. And the policy choice for all of you as policy makers, and in particular for the city council, is whether you are comfortable vesting that much discretion in an enforcement officer. The other key feature of the San Luis Obispo ordinance that I think is very important is the ability to issue orders requiring abatement of the noise. And what does that look like? Under the San Luis Obispo ordinance, if an officer is presented with a noisy situation, they can say, turn it off within half an hour or else you will get a ticket. So it empowers the officers to give the neighborhood immediate relief. And I think that's another key distinction. There are many others I could go into, but that's enough for a nutshell.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Greg?
Yes, I'm concerned about if we've collected any numbers of number of calls that have been happening, number of instances the police have responded in the neighborhoods in question, even if it's possible to pin them down to the areas that we're mostly concerned with. Because when we take these other measures, I think it's critical that we be able to measure in some way, are we doing better? And if we can look at what's been going on, and then we can compare numbers. And I would also suspect, as I've seen in other instances in other communities, that by paying more attention, we might actually get more calls. So some numbers might go higher. That doesn't necessarily mean we're not doing well. And then specifically, maybe Chief Sanchez could talk to us about, because I know quite a bit about Isla Vista and how the officers work together out there as different law enforcement agencies, and what they confront a lot of the time is underage drinking, drunk in public, minors in possession. In Isla Vista, we have students partying like in the streets. Here, I don't think that's actually happening right in the streets, so there's a difference here.
I'll go to your first comment, and we'd be glad to give you 2-3 years of statistics, and we'll send those to all of you in terms of how many calls for service and types of calls for service. I think that's really important, and really important for the community to see that. You're absolutely right on the second point, that once something gets started, we'll probably get more calls, but that's to be expected. But we don't just respond to calls for service, we respond to observations that the officers make. So, it's probably a wash. But you're right, the numbers of calls for service will increase, but that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing, whether people are cited or not. I think the deterrent will be there, and I think the presence will assist. And at the end of the day, the residents who live here every day, 365 days out of the year, I think deserve that. In terms of the issues at Isla Vista, I have no statistics, and Sheriff Brown isn't here to address that, so I won't speak for him. But you're also correct there. Most of our calls with young people here are loud noise, loud parties, the litter, some graffiti, underage drinking, that continues. It is not as prevalent, if you will, as in Isla Vista, and I've been there on several Halloweens and Flotopias and all the topias that they have. I've been to several, and the issue there is complete drinking in public, walking down the street. We do see that here, but not at the level of Isla Vista. But I think the truth is in the pudding, and I think you probably should see maybe 1 to 3 years of calls for service in this area, and I'll get those to you as soon as I can.
Thank you very much. We found that very helpful, and as we discuss things, and I know that the implementation team will. So thank you. All right. And Dr. Haslam?
Well, first, I was really very, very positively impressed with all of the work that has been done and with the care to detail. As I think about implementation, I think about a process that would begin with the less intrusive and work its way up, so as to avoid some of the potential hazards that Chief Sanchez had in mind. But also, if a less intrusive activity works, it means that we don't have to go to the next step. The very fact that we're meeting and talking about it, I think, is a positive step. Certainly, it has the impact of acknowledging to our neighbors that we're seriously concerned about this, that it's not something we're going to take lightly. And I would look forward to a process that would examine each of the suggestions made in terms of its intrusiveness and just to see what steps can be taken fairly quickly so that we can begin seeing some of these results.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Colon, do I understand now the description of the two ordinances you gave between ours and San Luis Obispo, that there's no immediate remedy if there's a noise problem? Cops can only say, oh, well, we'll write you a ticket. They can't shut it down?
Not directly under the noise ordinance. There may be ways to persuade people to shut down a party, but it's not explicit as it is in San Luis Obispo's ordinance.
Okay, well, that's certainly an area we should address, because if I'm a neighbor, I want to know the cops can do something, not just knock on the door and say hi.
Are there any other questions anyone has? Yes.
I'm curious if there are other members of the public that wanted to talk at all about, after having heard the presentation, if there's anybody else that would like to say anything. Mark, come on down, Mark. BB2.
Yeah, I just hope everybody here.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mark Taylor. I am a resident. I happen to live next door to Ground Zero here. And I just noticed one little thing. I wanted to notice that Amber and Andrew, who are our student reps, Andrew Besselman, they were at all the meetings and they weren't on the report, and I thought that it would be important. They'd like to know that their contributions were recognized. And a couple things. You asked about the smoking. No, nothing has been done about the smoking yet. There's still about 15 to 30 people that smoke every day that you walk through. So I'm sure something will happen. It's a little early in the process. Nothing has actually come about, but I know that City College is serious about their efforts and will follow through. Skateboarding. Kathy, you should know that skateboarding is illegal on all streets in the city of Santa Barbara. It's only on sidewalks they can skateboard, and they are already banned on the campus. They do not have the right to ride on the campus. So that isn't something that's actually new that's coming along. And then for Cam Sanchez, you know, that once a brick gets thrown through your window, I think it's important that the parents know that their son is throwing bricks through people's windows and could potentially kill people or do other damage. So as much as, I don't think anybody was suggesting publishing names in the paper or anything like that, but if there any way that the city could work with the school, which is what happened in this case, because when the case where they threw the brick through my window, the school and the city got together and they were actually able to work together and identify the individual and make things happen. So I think that there is a good precedent that has already been set, and I think I see lots of progress here happening. The partying in the street, yes. I pick up beer cans every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. Beer, bottles, so there's a lot of partying that goes on the street. I mean, it is definitely not to the extent of what goes on in Isla Vista, but it is. We have a lot of partying, and part of that is the big problem why it was the whole genesis of this whole process is because it's the partying. A lot of it happens is when the bars shut down at 2 in the morning. Everybody goes home. People are being more responsible. They take taxis home a lot of times, and then the taxi lets them out, and it's still party time. And so the party continues on for a bit longer. But, you know, with the noise ordinance and things like that, at least they're not going to go back to somebody's house and keep it going. We are really excited about the SLOW model. It's fantastic. Not only does it not criminalize and stigmatize the students, it would allow the police to actually have a tool that works. Because right now, when the police officers come around, they talk to you, they said, you know, we're embarrassed. We can't go there. We're toothless. We have nothing to say. The students laugh at us. They laugh at us. And they literally laugh at them. And so having the San Luis Obispo one actually gives them a tool where they say, you see this? You either shut it down or you get a ticket. They'll actually have something that works. So we are really wanting to hear that an effort and funds and that everybody is supporting that and going forward. I won't go into everything else, but you know, I think the priorities, I think Daniel laid out, did an excellent presentation on bringing it forward, what we want to do, and if we could just focus on the issues. And I do want to thank that all of you. I mean, there was a lot of people that showed up a lot and put in a lot of effort. And council members that came, and then the city staff that was there, and also City College. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That I can answer for you.
Bibi?
Thank you. This report is just the beginning, and that's what I keep having to tell myself. This is just looking at the problems. City College has grown by over 4,000 students in the last 10 years, and that's kind of the crux of it. It's up to 21,615 students off the website. 70% are from the Tri-County, and 6% are international. The impacts of housing over 6,000 out-of-area students is a real hit on our housing stock here. Many of the renters are the 18 to 21-year-olds. This also comes with an impact to parking, traffic, and police calls for service. SBCC right now for me is operating like a four-year school without the resources of a four-year school. It doesn't have a police department. It doesn't have all those housing resources that a four-year college would have. The other day I was watching Planning Commission and saw Trustee Croninger. And she was talking about a 3-unit condo conversion in her neighborhood in reference to general plan and living within our means and sustainability. That has to apply to City College too. I live near a 74-unit apartment building that has been converted to student housing. That was done without needing any requirements or any public hearings. And that's the issue we're dealing with, is we don't have the tools to manage these problems. The families that were in that building didn't leave the neighborhood. Now they're doubled and tripled up. So the impacts are far more than just what happens on this campus and drinking. It really is impacting our community. I support the noise ordinance. I feel that the City College needs to at least pay for the student workers, and that the incident information needs to be shared between the police and the campus administrators. The city will be shouldering the whole responsibility for the new ordinance. So there's a lot that falls on the city. I support utilizing the campus on Fridays and weekends, not just Saturday, without an increase to the number of students. Hopefully this will decrease our Thursday night parties and spread the traffic out more evenly. One of the main issues to me is really the planning issue. Educational facilities don't come under our plan, they don't go before the city review. So would we have the traffic problems we have here today if it had to comply with the rules of our community? And that's where we need to work together to bring it into compliance, because these issues are impacting everyone. And they will, if you engage in satellite campuses, you will have the same problems at those campuses too, and the same neighborhood issues. So I think we need to really buckle down and look at it from a general planning perspective. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your participation in the task force. Are there any other questions or comments that people want to make? Yes, Trustee Gerardo.
Yeah, Marianne, I wanted to know, and I know that one of the recommendations was we still want a mix of families and working and students. What are the implications right now for children and families in that area? We have an elementary school of a couple hundred students, a preschool, and so I'm wondering what was talked about in terms of implications for housing. I know, Jonathan, you brought up whenever housing moves in, you definitely displace families. So we definitely don't want to break up the neighborhood and the community that's there. So I'm just wondering.
The task force discussed that. Certainly they brought it up frequently. They also discussed it in terms of traffic with young children walking to and from school. So those are certainly important issues. I have to say that none of us came up with solutions. What we came up with in those discussions was identifying those are major issues, and then beginning to look, and the San Luis model is one of the ways they began to look at what solutions are available. But it's very clear that there are two kinds of things that will need to be done in the implementation period. One will be to look at other models for solutions, for example, to that question of families being able to afford housing given the student body needs for housing, and pushing people out accidentally, and then the whole traffic thing. So there are needs for exploring other communities that have solved some of these problems, and there are also needs for exploring, as Bibi mentioned, some changes in laws or rules, and also looking at that from other communities and to see how that can work. What the task force did not want to do is to have this solved piecemeal or by all city responsibility or all college responsibility, because we knew that would not have a solution. Before we go, I'd like to ask all of the people who attended the meetings, that means all the staff, all the faculty, all the citizens, anyone who attended these meetings, to stand. Would you stand? I just don't think any of us realize how much work that was and how much you gave up your private time to do this. And I think the community, the whole community, not just the Mesa, owe you a great debt of gratitude. Did you want to say something? Would you come up? Thank you, Bobby.
I'm Diana Bottoms. I am a resident of Oceano. I'm a landlord, a tenant, a user of our public transportation, so I have to go down that scary Oceano every day. I want to say that on terms of my eight-unit building, I'm between the Garvin Theater, and my balcony overlooks the Garvin. I see all the students, they all know me, they wave, we're all friendly. And Oceano, there is a great deal going on. But I found that communication with my tenants, and particularly with the youngsters who admittedly are on their first time out of the house and thanked me just a couple days ago for being tolerant and being honest and open with them. And they asked my forgiveness for being, hey, it's the first time out of the house. Do you get it? I do get it. Believe me, I get it. I'm still getting it. So those kids are, if they're communicated with first and foremost, that to me was the most important thing and was the leveler in my small community there. The other thing I wanted to say quickly is that my brother is been in city government for a long time. He's the city treasurer of Redondo Beach now, long-term on the city council. And our family owns quite a bit of property here in Santa Barbara as well, so he wants to know what's going on here. And he has watched every little thing along the way, read all the notes and everything, and he said to me this morning, Diana, this is city government at its best. And I felt so proud. I think you guys should feel so proud. He said, this is really an anomaly, and appreciate it, he said. So,
thank you, Diana, and thank you for your participation in the task force.
Yeah, it's been really great. I so appreciate all of you.
All right. Thank you again.
Madam Chair?
Yes. The
So,
mayor would like to.
thank you. I'm making the assumption that the council wants to move forward with N1, so I guess we need to direct staff if that's, or at some point need to let staff know that that's something we want to do. But I guess a question for Mr. Casey, with the recommendation of showing progress by fall of 2015, which was what this recommendation was, could you maybe walk through what that means in terms of what we need to do on our end?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think what we would like out of you today from the city council side is to direct staff to bring back an item for council direction to move forward with an update to our noise ordinance. It would be a joint effort with our community development staff, police department, and the city attorney's office. And so we need to get your policy direction. That's something you want to do. This is a work session, so you can't take any formal action, but
I'm
you
seeing
could direct
nods,
us.
though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we could then bring that back. We'll begin that ordinance work. It's hard to predict exactly how long an ordinance will take. How complicated of an outreach is this going to be? It's going to apply citywide most likely. Are there some unintended consequences? We certainly have a very good model from San Luis Obispo to look at, and our initial look seems very positive in that regard as well. So I think it's just due diligence on our part to keep that ordinance process going forward as appropriately fast as possible. I don't think we want to rush this and make a mistake, but certainly I think there's interest to get this done. Are we finished by fall? I don't know. That seems quick. 6 months
said
seems
progress,
quick, but
not
exactly.
finished. Progress.
Certainly we could be making progress, absolutely.
And I am hoping that President Gaskin and you can work closely together so that those things that are appropriate for the college to address immediately, there are some that will take a long time, but some that we could address immediately, will be coordinated between the two of you. Would you like to say something about that?
I just wanted to confirm, I believe that we are prepared to move forward on A3, Paul and I, which is to form an implementation task force to pursue top priority actions.
That's great. That's exactly what we would like to be the next step. Once again,
Just real quickly
Oh,
on that
yes.
point, just could you help me with understanding more about that step? Is that going to be staff-driven? Will the public be involved? You know, are there going to be, deliverables to?
Don't know. It states an implementation task force, and I think it will vary, probably all of the above, depending upon what items will be implemented. But we need a steering committee, if you will. I'm not sure what you call it at the city level, but we tend to call it a steering committee, which drives key initiatives. We can't do everything. So I think we'll be looking at ways that we can create this overarching body to drive key initiatives.
Okay, well, I guess it's important, I think, for the public to understand that as soon as that is determined, so that they understand the timetable, when deliverables, are going to be apparent, because I do sense that they're very supportive of what's happened so far and excited about the progress, but want to maintain that momentum. And I guess I'm sure all of us want to echo that, make sure that you hear that out loud from this meeting today.
there are some things in that report that can be done immediately by the two institutions and do not require a committee or anything like that. There are many things in the report that could not, and that need a timing and an implementation plan with participation from all of the interested parties, certainly including the citizens.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I have to ask the question that I've been hearing in the public discourse about housing, and that is, what authority does the college have to control enrollment from out-of-district students?
Thank you. The education code is very, very clear. We are an open access institution, which means that we take the first 100% of the students that apply. In other words, we have no enrollment criteria. We cannot implement a cap of, let's say you've heard of UCSB implementing a 10,000 student cap or a 5,000 student cap. We cannot do that. We are open to all residents in the state of California, and they pay resident tuition, which is $46 a unit. There are enrollment priorities, and they are stipulated by the legislature, and the top enrollment priorities, the students who get the top enrollment priorities, which is your first come, first serve, but only the prioritization, are students who are returning vets, former foster youth, who are students with disabilities, or who are economically and educationally disenfranchised. It doesn't say that those four groups have to be from Santa Barbara. They simply need to possess those criteria in order to register first. Our institution is open access, meaning that students can enroll until there are no more seats. And the only way we can limit enrollment, which hurts everyone, is what happened during the Great Recession for 5 years when the state cut our budget and we had to cut course sections. So excellent question. I hope that makes sense.
So if someone were to pursue that, it would be in the state legislature
Correct.
to say that priority has to go to in-district students.
Yes, and that was regulation back up until about late 80s, something like that, and that was relinquished as a regulation by the legislature because they saw our students being very, very mobile. I encourage you all to think about perhaps you had a child who, upon matriculation from high school, moved to San Diego or San Francisco, or one of your neighbor's kids did to go to college. Our citizens are very mobile in this state, and that's why the legislature removed that requirement 20, 30 years ago.
Okay, so Dr. Gaskin, we've been talking about the state of California. What about international students?
International students are capped by board policy, and that has been in place for quite some time, and that cap is 8%.
Okay, very good. May I make some suggestions? I used to be a student advisor at UC Santa Barbara, and you call it here the Student Senate, and I know that they've been engaged in peer-derived solutions, and when I was listening to Councilmember Hart getting at that behavior control, I really like the idea of resident RAs, right? Resident, even though you don't have a dormitory, because I think even an 18 or 19-year-old, they're an adult, but they do respond to somebody who's older or somebody who's in a position of authority. And I know I'm suggesting something that we've been talking about, but that seemed like getting to the matter. And then I know the SNAP element of the noise ordinance was that someone of their peer age would go door to door telling them, hey, you're getting a warning. So that might be the connection to do that. I have heard Mayor Schneider talk about just cause eviction, and especially related to a disabled woman who was evicted from her place, and I'm not sure really if that was just hyperbole, that it was a city college student that was going to replace her, but certainly our tenants in this city need protection. And when I worked at UC Santa Barbara with Associated Students, they were the umbrella organization for the Isla Vista Tenants Union. And already people are asking me for meetings about forming some kind of tenants union. And then maybe, Trustee Gallardo, that would go to, they keep track of when families are evicted and what are the trends, and pressing for relocation assistance in those cases or other kinds of tenants protections. So I am moving on that, being a lifelong renter myself. And we have on our city staff Andrea Bufano with our rental housing mediation program, and she told me she has research and reports on these kinds of solutions. And so I'm scheduling a meeting with her. And I'm really grateful to have been part of this, and certainly I commend everyone who's been participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank all of you who have spent a great deal of time on this. It is very exciting. It was a great privilege for Marty and myself to serve in this role, and we thank all of you and look forward to watching as the implementation begins. And with this is the first step, and as it moves on. This is a wonderful community, and we can help make it even more wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.